and thank you for hanging around for the end of the day. And I would like this opportunity to welcome our panelists. If our panelists could come to the stage. We have 5, there we go. Sean, I know I saw you.
Colleen.
Okay. Nice, okay. Awesome, so I heard that they were testing, right?
Check.
So, this is an opportunity for us to really, from our last panel discussion, one of the things that I take away is that the pandemic was very dramatic for everyone, but we have so much learning lessons from this experience that it could only bring us to a whole nother level of education. So I'm honored to present our panelists, and if we could start from my right over and introduce yourselves and why you're here.
Hi, everybody. John Hartigan. I'm the CEO of Domain U, experiential training platform. Happy to be here.
Hi everyone, my name is Colleen Gallagher. I'm the owner of Colleen Gallagher International, which is an online education and coaching company. And what inspired me to be here is just kind of to get out of my comfort zone. I normally go to entrepreneur or creative events, so I wanted to hop back in here as I'm finishing my PhD.
Nice.
Hi there, my name is Parker Lynch. I'm the CEO of Hedgehog Health. I am a former special education teacher turned entrepreneur. I created a world's first fidget computer mouse. I have it in my pocket right here. It's called the Hoglet. And did a Kickstarter, and now we're selling on Shopify and Amazon. But yeah, just trying to figure out ways to help unique learners learn. That's the mission of our company.
Hi, Sean Nathan. I'm with Kapilani Community College over in Hawaii. I'm a facilities manager, so I'm here to basically offer some insights from the facility side of things.
Nice, well, welcome. So I know that you're in this stage because you have specific experience in online learning. And I'm going to start with John. And John, what training challenges are companies facing with the unpredictable shift of the labor market? And how has changed the relationship between person and remote learning?
So many of you sitting in the audience have gone through a radical shift in the way that you're receiving information from your organizations, how you are training your students, how you are receiving training. And so what's happened in the last 2 years is we've come to a realization that the conference model is very effective, as we know. Zoom is effective in certain situations, but it has its limitations, as does the conference model. And so basically we have this kind of patchwork out there right now where people are trying to combine systems, find the right recipe to be able to train effectively. But it's still, there is a huge bottleneck right now. And at least in the corporate world and potentially in the academic world, what's happened, they were kind of waiting and hoping that it was going to go back to what it was like before. And now they're realizing, uh-oh, it's not really going to go back to the way it was before. And so, and Zoom isn't really working. We really need to find new solutions, new ways to train, new process, new behaviors. And so, and new training styles and new technology.
Yes, thank you so much, John. Carlene, I'm going to go to you. Okay, so tell us, how is the younger generation using technology to learn instead of academic institution?
Yeah, I love this question. So I'm 28. I'm a little bit young, but I started my company 4 years ago at 24. And even though I have done the academic route with my master's and my PhD, there's a lot of my clientele that are in the younger generation that won't even touch academia. And these people are making $10, $20, $50,000 months. You know, one of my highest level clients is a $200,000 month. And this is totally with one person. Your profit margins are extremely high. And what they're doing, and we can all kind of do this, is when have you like listened to something, if it's music or if it's a podcast or if it's an audio, and you're doing 50 million things around the house, but you're like, I'm so productive and I'm doing this and this and this. Who has had that happen? So the younger generation doesn't really resonate anymore with, let's say, a curriculum. It's more as what has been your life experience and what are you teaching and sharing about that? And how can I access you on my time in my way to then learn that? The academic argument is, you know, how do we retain that, right? How do we measure that? In the entrepreneur model, which is where a lot of the younger generation is going, is through revenue. And it's digital platforms where I've leveraged them on over 25 different platforms. If you're not including my podcast, that's on 20 platforms by itself. But you have to start looking at education of who is it you are, what's been your life experience, whatever type of professor you are, and how do you share that so students can really connect with your body of work and set their life up for success.
That's awesome. You know, what came up to me is we have many famous speakers out there like Tony Robbins that are speaking to education without it being academic.
Yeah.
And it's promoting that, yeah.
And that's the field that I really play in, but I also have this academic researcher side of me, and I feel like people like us, we're really at a loss because we're trying to be forced to get something like a PhD or a book that's recognized under organizations, but our revenue results and our community results of what communities we're leading, like, you know, one of my communities is 70,000 people. That's larger than many institutions that are here. So when you look at that, you have to begin to look at this virtual world isn't a joke, I guess. It's really who is it you're being? And it's back to authenticity. I know one person was talking about self-awareness. It gets back to that transparency, like be who it is you want to be, share that, and allow the right people to find you. And I promise you when that happens, there's just endless opportunities that come. You can call it magic, manifestation, business. I've just seen it, so yeah.
Thank you for that. I have two young men myself, and they are not in the academic path like I am. But they're entrepreneurs, which makes it. So I'm going to go to Parker. Parker, how has your company, Hedgehog Health, contribute to new experiences in education?
Like I said, I started Hedgehog with a student in mind. I was at my first teaching spot, and my student could not bring a fidget device into the computer room. He was not allowed to. That led me down the road of creating the first prototypes and kind of making that leap to being an entrepreneur, starting my company, getting in front of people, doing the Kickstarter, and just really thinking about harkening on the lessons of teaching to the senses, right? The Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. I've always been a visual learner, so I really need that. And everyone learns differently, so that's kind of the theory behind what we do at Hedgehog, is kind of challenge the status quo.
Yeah, and you mentioned about the special needs. Like, talk to us more about how special needs, how important it is for us to modify our work online for special needs.
Yeah, absolutely. With the increase of screen time and having to be on Zoom and like during the pandemic, I know as someone who was diagnosed with ADHD very late in life, like the last couple of years, extreme ADHD, sitting in front of a computer all day is so difficult for me. So I need to fidget to focus. That really helps me. I know it helps a lot of kids that we work with. So yeah, I think it's like going outside of the status quo, the current thinking how can we make this lesson really appeal to, whether it's sending something home with a child, like if let's say, God forbid, we go to this, we're doing the in-home schooling again, and we're doing things over Zoom again. Is it sending things home with the child? Is it, think outside the box? So that's kind of like, my advice to other teachers.
Yes, yeah. Fidgeting was not allowed, right? But fidgeting also supports the brain to move, right? Just like walking around, us kinesthetic people. If we're walking and we're moving around, our brain actually functions better. So there's like this new way of thinking, especially with our young people who've been diagnosed with special needs, to understand their learning is different. Their process is okay.
100%, yeah. Whenever, I'm the type of teacher, like if a student needs to be walking around the back, they're still engaged, right, in the back of the classroom. I never had an issue with that because, I was that kid back in the day. I would get reprimanded for it, but, I'd always be tapping a pencil or doing something without knowing I had ADHD. So just, it helps me focus. So I think a lot of kids are similar.
Yes, thank you so much. So, Ronwin, I am so excited to have you share the same question. Tell us how you are contributing to the online education.
So sorry, bear with me. It's a lot colder in here than ambient temperatures in Hawaii. So as far as contributing to online education, it's definitely been very different from my side. A lot of what I was dealing with over the last couple of years because of the pandemic was basically trying to figure out what we're going to do differently to enable the instructors to be successful with doing remote learning on site because they didn't necessarily have the means to do it from their homes. Other things that we were dealing with and going through was trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to prepare the facilities to bring them back since we're probably going to be going in some direction of bringing students back, or what can we be doing differently with our facilities so that we don't necessarily need to bring everyone back or bring them back in the same way, but we can still enable some remote learning opportunities in the future. So perhaps infrastructure-wise, what do we need to look at there? Mm-hmm. One of the projects that we were looking at that was up for proposal was, we want to, it was very, very big and bold and it was amazing. They wanted to knock down some walls in some 3 adjoined classrooms. And we were saying, okay, well, great. If we do that, make this a huge wide open space, how do we enable this then for students? And there were conversations of, partition walls that can open and close, cameras that we'll bring in so that instructors can lecture or do demonstrations and then students remotely can view the lessons that are going on. Other things then that we had to start taking into consideration were on the electrical side, if we have students in the classroom, how are they going to be able to participate? Do we have enough power available for them to plug in their devices and all these sorts of things?
Yeah, I love that you're talking about the infrastructure because that's something that we, when you look at the traditional classroom, by the way, this is not a traditional classroom. I love the circles because it contributes to collaboration and talking, but you're speaking more of like transformation in the infrastructure. So in hybrid models as well as just learning, it's more of a specialized, individualized is the word I'm looking for, individualized learning for our kids. So thank you. You want to add more to that?
Nope, I'm fine.
Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to go on to John again. And John, this is a question that I put dear to my heart. I work in the after-school field, and I've been training directors and line staff for over 30 years. No, I started when I was 6. And educating the field was very important. So how is remote learning contributing to the new job market of the 21st century?
So, as we've discussed, the current situation is what's being called a hybrid situation. So some people are in the office, some people are in the classroom, some people are still working from home. So that creates a number of challenges. And so it's a hybrid approach that must be taken. And what we're seeing in the marketplace that is working is not as radically different as what was being done before, but the emphasis and the priority on the online education and specifically in on-demand and self-paced learning. So 24/7 streaming, and she was talking about social media, and I'm going to tell you, kids are learning from social media like more than probably
Yes.
in school in many cases, you know. So we can learn a lot from the influencers and from the people who are on the forefront of these things. And so basically what we've determined and the approach that we're taking is having the trainers, and I was giving a talk earlier if you were there, the subject matter experts and the trainers develop the video on demand content to their specifications and use themselves if that's the case. And then that can be 70 to 80% of the bulk of the content. We also suggest very short episodic learning videos, so 3-5 minutes, even shorter if possible, and just lots of building of the episodes and lots of interaction. So you need to have the capability where the learner must interact with the content. It can't just be a training video and at the end there's a quiz. It's ineffective. And then the other element to this that is critical is the accountability aspect and the setting of expectations. So the trainer, instead of becoming the teacher, so to speak, they become the mentor. So they set the expectation. Hey, great to have you with our company. Great to have you, on our staff. As part of your onboarding, you need to take this class, and this class. And in 1 week, okay, you can take it 24/7, 365, whatever you want to do at your own pace. And then in 1 week, we're going to meet, and I'm going to ask you some specific questions about the content to make sure that you understand the fundamentals. And I want you to ask me questions about the content that wasn't in there, that were outliers, that you just didn't quite get. And that way you're putting the ownership of the training onto the individual employee, and now the instructor becomes a mentor. And so that's what we believe is the future of training online.
That's awesome. I'm going to challenge that thinking for a second, because in my research, one of the disadvantages of online learning is cheating. So it's an asynchronous process. They go and you say, do this amount of hours, and how do we balance ourselves out?
The easiest way to explain it is like a video game. So we truly believe in not just gamification, but the way that certain video game simulations are designed. So yes, they can find hacks and they can do certain things, but there is a requirement on our platform where the individuals have to demonstrate their knowledge of a specific task set. They can't Google it, they have to input it, right? So it's not just a quiz at the end. So they actually have to move things around or do different things or interact with the actual platform. For example, Canvas, or if they're building a Canvas class, they actually have to interact with Canvas and show the system that they are that they understand how to develop those courses. And there's really no way around that. So I think that kind of answers the question.
Thank you. I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes.
We'll get you
for
set
sure.
up, no problem.
Yeah. Okay, Carlene. In regards to virtual learning, how could we engage our learners online?
I think this is a really important question. I'm actually looking at it in my dissertation. So who here, like I said, if you're walking around and living your life and you're listening to a podcast or you're listening to a YouTube or you're listening to meditation music and you have this big revelation, how many of you would measure your engagement? Even though this is a life-transforming thing, whatever you listen to, changes your behavior forever. It's that one moment, but you want to measure the engagement. How many of you can name that? What did you do to measure the engagement? I love. And so that's one great example. So I like that. So what I offer in a lot of my courses or a lot of things that I do, and back to what you actually shared here, is we're never going to do something, we're always going to find the hack when it's not something we're connected to. And connectivism learning theory, I don't know if many of you have heard of it, but cognitism learning theory is a lot of what academia goes on right now. Connectivism learning theory is that next level, when you're tapping into the different networks that people have. So we're all in a network right now, and then from Cheryl that I get to know, from you that I get to know. I'm tapping into all of your networks after this, right? And that is actually where learning takes place. And the virtual world, the engagement is how much you stay in connection with the network. So whether that's an email, it's a text message, it's a like on a photo. I was sharing one thing, my Instagram used to have 10,000 and I got hacked, so we're at 500 and something now. But I was like, I could tell you, even if everyone hasn't bought a product, I know every single person that is on my Instagram. I can tell you how I know them, where I met them, what engagement and photos they will like and not like based on what program that I'm launching. And so when you're looking at engagement, right, or measuring this kind of new way, it's you want to begin to look at metrics different, writing something down, sharing what someone wrote down, instead of it being a forced exercise that we're requiring to do. And virtual learning is so important is because learning can happen when the student is ready, not at a specific time, right? Like if a therapist, right? You don't need the therapist every week at 2 p.m. Sometimes if you're having a mental breakdown, you need a therapist right then, right? And I'm just making it, in a funny way for you guys, but I'm just sharing, like, we treat education as this robotic thing, but we're not always in the right state to learn. Like, when it's a 7 p.m. class, I'm much more of someone I'd like to get it done early on my workout, on my hike, listen, get it done. I like to listen on 2.5 speed because that's how I function. Some people like to slow it down and listen 5 times over, pause it. You can't do that in a live lecture, and we're missing that component. And the engagement, like I said, it's going to be different based on what you're teaching, but you've got to begin to look at engagement as a way of what they're doing when you're not around. What are you teaching and they're doing it when you're not around? And that is where you'll really start to measure the impact of your legacy and of your body of work.
Yeah, I'm curious to, for those of us who are in education institutions
Yep.
or training adults, how do we communicate that they are actually learning through social media or this networking connection? I mean, it's fascinating because we're not thinking that way, where sometimes we want to, not sometimes, I know a lot, we just want to take the phone away from the kids.
Yeah.
We don't think that they're being beneficial,
Yep.
but how could we bring that benefit to the,
Yeah, so what I'd say is, I was going to say I think it's important because I actually am on my phone all the time if you guys watch me. It's really funny, and even in my PhD classes, all my professors, I'm like the best worst student. I have a 4.0, but I'm always on my phone. But every time, like, if the conversation stops, I will engage as if I was almost there. It's almost like there wasn't even a phone screen that I was doing. It's like I can almost be in 2 worlds simultaneously. And so what I'd want to say, again, and back to what I think is so important about virtual, and just whoever you are as an academia professor, right, or a professor or just person, right, like what, that video we watched, the clip, like, who are you being and why did you choose this path? And I think that's the most important thing, because we're not just here to be measured anymore, especially in higher ed, as a test that you take and that's going to make it. Like, you want to know that you touch someone's lives. And there was professors, like even my dissertation chair, he knows that there's things I don't like or whatever, but he's touched my life in such a way to inspire me to think of academia, to think of organizational. And so you want to just begin to think, maybe it's not that they're ignoring you, maybe it's the way that they process what you're saying, maybe it's the way that they're moving through it. And if you're curious, like, I've had teachers email me and be like, hey Colleen, I know this is not your thing, you're more in this, how can we adapt the assignment so it meets what I needed and works for you? Yes. Brilliant. I started one of my virtual magazines from that way, from a professor who did that. No other student did it, didn't care. When I was an undergrad, I did an unknown cancer event, and that was still virtual, right? I was still doing it. So it's looking at if you're noticing that, because some students that is right, some it's not right. It's being aware to then adapt and meet someone halfway and have that connection and conversation. So they remember you, and then you might get a network, and they will also get a network. And that's where the that's where new measurement is, but we don't have a quite way, I guess, besides a 4.0 or this, but that would be the variable of how you're looking at it, or writing things down. What did you do? Write this down, send it to me.
it's like bringing purpose into social
What-
media.
well,
I
what
would
if-
open it up to anybody in
I just
the
want
panel.
to say one of the other things, just real quick, is one of the challenges is when you have to train material that isn't fun and exciting necessarily, right? So the motivation behind, like, eating your broccoli, right? I mean, there's different goal set, there's different, and you had mentioned, like, depends on the content and what you're teaching, and that's really true. From the social media, we can learn a lot from the social media aspect, but then there's that outlier, which is the challenge. Hey, you got to learn arithmetic, and you got to learn grammar, and you got to learn these things that can be really boring and dry. So how do we make it? How do we get you through that learning curve? And it can, like the authenticity aspect of it, totally agree with that. And we also talked about motivations and behaviors earlier, and I agree with the emotional, like, connection aspect of it. So that's really a challenge.
And I think what you said too, and I don't know exactly with from how much you have influence over curriculum. I think we need a much more adaptable curriculum from what I see, right, in this kind of world, right? I mean, I have 25 online courses that I can run them live, people can self-study them, you can enroll 6 months again when I'm rerunning it. Like, it's a very adaptable model where people plug in where they want. We obviously, that's hurting academia so much. There's so much revenue that is going away. I mean, it's good for me, but like it's, my industry, but it's so much missed opportunity and cognitive thinking is missing from that. And I think what you're saying is, there's a qualitative class. I'm not a quantitative. I'm not a quantitative researcher. I'm qualitative. I don't really care to take a sure, give me one intro, I'll suffer through it, but I don't need 5 of them. Like, it doesn't make sense. So if you have influence over that, you need to look at, okay, the student doesn't need that. What are the other courses that we can adapt, or how can they hybrid, like this, my chair, can I have gotten him for 2 or 3 self-study classes that could supplement for that? That's where we have to start having the conversation if you want advanced people who really do want to do good things in the world. And there are so many pros that academia bring that entrepreneur can't do by itself. There's a whole legacy and what's it called, like lineage that academia and institutions have that can't just be wiped away. It's kind of native in a way, like you can't just do it. So that's where I'd see where you'd fix some of these kind of issues that are hard in a rock, and talking about that adaptability for your institution, for your mission, your core values, how that would look.
Yeah, nice. Parker, could you, contribute to that? How could we improve our online remote learning?
Yeah, absolutely. So the next iteration of the Hoglet, I've been thinking about this for a long time, and when I was questioning the computer mouse, how far has that come? And since the 70s, that hasn't changed too much. I was thinking, why does just kind of questioning the idea of it in general? Why does it just go from me as the user to the computer? Something happens and there's no feedback on my end. So with the next iteration of the Hoglet, I don't know what it's going to be called yet, it will actually provide feedback, positive feedback to the user. Again, like kind of going back to the engagement, talking about engagement, Johnny gets 4 problems in a row correct, you'll get, it will vibrate, it will light up, make a noise, you can toggle these things on and off, just to, give that, that dopamine feedback and make it, something that, again, like gamification of education. That's something that, since I was a teacher in Thailand, we had no budget at all. We had to make all of our, games, and I had some great mentors there who, let me just watch their class and observe and take bits and pieces here and there. I'm all for gamification of education, making that broccoli taste better.
Well, I love the name Hoglet, the Hoglet. I just think it's it's very cool.
Cool.
Yeah,
Bronwyn, could you contribute? Make a contribution? How could we improve remote learning?
Well, I think part of it is remembering that no 2 classes are the same, right? With the community college system that I work for, there are classes that have to be done on site. Maybe not all the time, but certainly a part of it has to be done on site. There are automotive tech classes. Yeah, you could come up with a digital-based system for that class, teach them all the parts of the car, where they go, blah, blah, blah. But are you going to want that person working on your car if they've never touched a car before? We have nursing programs, we have EMS programs, we have so many dental hygiene programs that at a certain point, you do need to bring them back into the classroom. And so you want to make sure that for curriculums like those, that you are designing spaces and supporting those on-site spaces, still maintaining them. And if you can find ways to innovate to offer them remote learning opportunities that tie into that, well, great, perfect, beautiful. But still got to keep in mind that it's not always going to be English, math, science, those kinds of courses. You're going to have other people out there with very specific programs that will require on-site learning.
Nice. And You know, again, I'm going to speak to the specialize and the individualize. With K-12, could we emphasize a little bit? This is a general question for anyone. With the K-12 online learning, how could we continue to enhance that experience? There's a lot of benefits to online learning, so I want you to express those benefits as well.
Well, again, I will caveat this with the sense that I am focused more in the professional space, but I have some very specific knowledge because I have 2 children that are right in that age group, and 10 and 13, and my son is like a Fortnite fanatic, and I watch how he interacts with Fortnite, but also with social media. Yeah, and YouTube and different. You know, we lock down a lot of stuff. But all that being said, there is a way with online learning to be able to take the best of the behavioral aspect of social media and gaming type situations and integrating that with our offerings, with our content offerings, the styles, the way, the architecture, the way that the content is produced, and the way that the video games offer this radical interaction. They have to be engaged emotionally on some level. They have to be, or it won't work, and that's why Zoom struggles, right, in many cases. So that would be my 2 cents.
No, I'm very excited that you said that because the interaction with the computer is emotional, and the interaction with whatever gaming they're doing could contribute for them to do a little bit more.
And also I wanted to say too, just the fact that they, on these games, you know, they have teams, right? So they're talking to each other, and I had no idea my son is like a military leader. Okay, he's got these guys, and he's like left. I'm like, what is he talking about? But he's 10, and my wife is like, he's gonna be running a company or something. So, but there's that interactivity too. So you're actually interacting around this interactive platform. It's mind-boggling for me, and yet it's his nature. Right, metaverse kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say Zoom actually just had a webinar the other day I went to where I was in their beta group. They're actually going metaverse so that when you're in the room, it'll feel like I'm sitting right next to Cheryl. Like I'll be actually to feel like the presence or like your little avatar. So the technology is catching up, and it will not be that long. I mean, less than 5 years for sure.
Your kids right now are going to spend time in some kind of a metaverse-like environment.
But what I'd say with K through 12 specifically, you know, it does come back to this curriculum. We're speaking, I guess, to all of you are more at that level than, you know, what exactly. But I think it's a more adaptable curriculum. And if you're looking at that, let's say, hey, we're on a Zoom. What do you like better? Do you like to chat or do you like to be on video better? That is even one huge difference of how to run a classroom. Yes. And what is your strength and what is your weakness? To me, I probably would, well, it depends who's in the room. I would prefer to be on video, but certain people I'd prefer to chat. And that could be a weakness, right? So, okay, let's evaluate this as developing a holistic being, and how do we do that? Relationshiping, I think, is huge in the online world. So if you were to say, hey, as a classroom today, instead of talking about history, or we could even put history to now, we're going to have full-blown relationships, as I do for many years, with people I've never met and probably will not meet. So like physically, maybe I will, but you know, you have to look at how do you have that dialogue? How do you actually get to know someone in the online world? How do you connect with them? How do you build a relationship? And that would be the K to 12 is, what do you want to feel? And if you notice a child is going more towards coding, they're really analytical, they're doing that, then they need to be put into a coding class. And that needs to be an option instead of it this math and that algebra and this. Yes. If someone wants to be it, sure, but the measurements are off. The measurements are different. We need a more adaptable style, and you as the teacher, the professor, wherever you're at, is bringing your authentic self to that so kids can believe they have access to something outside of these architecture until they get to that place. That's would be my,
Yeah.
it's so situational, so it's hard to give you a very brick and mortar answer because we aren't dealing with brick and mortar anymore.
Well, there's definitely a learning curve for us as educators, and I'm hearing a lot of emotional intelligence could be taught through online learning, through the networking, through the connections, through the leadership and the interaction being emotional. So I would love to hear from the rest of the panel, how could we continue to improve our practices for K-12?
Yeah, well, I'll just go back, well, I heard Avatar, or
Yeah, it's either one.
and to me that resonates as well. I work a lot with people on the autism spectrum, and there a lot of times, I won't make a blanket statement, but a lot of times, you know, they're more comfortable like being behind an avatar, and they can express themselves better. And that's one thing that I think, like the metaverse, you know, I know very little about it. You know, it's kind of a mystery to me, but I'm trying to learn as much as I can, as quickly as I can. I think that is where, you know, some of these, there can be an advantage made out of this, right? Like, and I think, you know, obviously the pandemic, terrible. There are good things that are coming out of this in technology, and some, you know, I think it's all these leaders in technology or in education. It's our job to tap into that and really try to pull out the good and try to, you know, how can this help? And how can we like be forward thinking and help all learners?
Yes, of course, of course.
Well, I work at a community college, so I don't have too much experience with the K-12 group. What I would pretty much just push as a message for any educational facility is to invest in your facility to whatever extent you plan to maintain it. Maybe it will make sense to get rid of some buildings. Maybe it'll make sense to repurpose some buildings. But with whatever degree you plan to keep the facilities online, invest in them so that they are ready for this going forward, so that they're ready for these remote learning platforms, because we were completely behind the ball on the facility side with making sure that we could accommodate this change, especially at the rapid level that we were expected to, courtesy of the pandemic.
Yeah, but you know, actually, what you're learning in community college is not too far-fetched on what we could give our kindergartens and K-12 group. It's very similar, the learning process of adults. You know, a heterogeneous environment allows individuals that are learning to choose their learning process. And when you say restructuring our infrastructure, I love that, because that's a great message to think about. Not all of us learn sitting down with a pen and paper. You know, I'm not going to take offense if you're on the computer while I'm up here talking. But in a traditional classroom, it's put away your computer, listen to me, stop talking, stop fidgeting, raise your hand to talk. So those are styles that, that traditionally took us to a certain degree, but not anymore.
I just wanted to mention too, I think this conference, the timing of it, this is one of the most exciting times to be in education, to be in training, to be in this industry, in my opinion, in our lifetime, because of this, yeah. It really is. I mean, we're standing on the precipice of technology, behavioral shifts and changes, and understanding the brain in ways that we've never had before because of certain technologies.
Yeah. And
Isn't it a shame, John, that we are having change foisted on us from outside instead of as an educational institution? As Robert was talking about earlier today, why aren't we the change agents? Why aren't we coming up with the metaverse and the three-dimensional lab that you can do online? You have to be in a lab and bring them all to building. That to me is the shame of it.
I was going to say, I actually totally agree with you. Like, I think this is one of the most exciting times. I mean, I'm a tech girl, so I guess I'm, a bit biased, but it's so exciting because I feel as academic institutions, right, you have to look at the funding, right? It was more limited by banking for loans, right? And it was also more limited by who gave grants, where now, right, Entrepreneur MySpace, we're not limited by that. We're literally able to go online and we figured it out and we can make our own funds very easily and reinvest it, and this is a navigation tool. Where a professor working in an institution, you can't just say, hey, let me go sell to these people or like help them do that and get ownership and reinvest it in the organization, right? And I think there have been ideas, but I think where it comes from within now is those of you who are in it is raising your hand and saying, no, this needs to be an adaptable curriculum and I'm going to fight for that. And here's actually my interest of research or my area of expertise. And this is what I'm going to focus in on. And maybe we might need a curriculum adaptable with this college and collaborate with that college. So students who are there, they come here. I don't know how the back end revenue share would go, or that's way beyond, that's but that's where I think you as one person, that's where it starts from inside, is like that way, because without that, it's just the same narrative of who's ever pushing the curriculum that's ever going into this thing, da-da-da-da. But I have seen, and I've experienced at Pepperdine. I'm so proud to be a student there, and there have been professors who have fought for someone like me, who I have not wanted to do certain things, and they've been creative and found it. And what a great opportunity, because for the rest of my life, I'm 28, I will forever vouch for that company. And whatever ROI and grants that I'll probably give them in the future, what a great thing they did, and that was during COVID, even when it wasn't perfect. So I think that's where it is, and that's what, back to what I said initially, it's like you do matter as one academia professor. You do matter as one there, and I'm sales too, but it's your job to fight for the customer. In this, it's your job to fight for the student, right? And you've got to push, I'm not saying you, but we all push back. And I've done that in my own way in the online world, and that's probably why I've created so much in 4 years or done the things I've done. But I've not been afraid to be like, no, that's actually not going to work, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And here's the measurement result, which is finances, but money, to show you that. And so, and high client, 80% retention rate of students. So
one quick thing. I love her response on this, because I think it's really true. And there's some real fundamental issues. You get politicians involved, and there you go. But what I would suggest, just maybe a practical takeaway, and this is just my personal opinion. You, as educators, have a huge influence over the kids that are sitting in your classroom, whether you know it or not. My favorite teacher was Mr. Ambrosio in 4th grade. I'll never forget him. And so may I suggest that when you do your curriculums or when you assign your projects, right? Hey, what video game do you play? Why do you like that? Let's break down what's going on in that. Why is this so attractive? And understand, have them really dive into that and maybe report back to you. And then they'll start to have an understanding of it. So what I would suggest is maybe do assignments, or if you can, around these kinds of topics, because that's going to get them to realize and think that, it's not just candy on social media. It's not just junk. There's a lot going on in these situations, and used the right way can be very powerful. And who knows, you literally have the innovators in your classrooms. So foster that attitude of innovation. Foster that attitude and perception of innovation. A healthy, not ridiculous, but let them know that they are the ones that are going to come up with the best solutions and ideas.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would love to close it off with some comments on what could we take away from this conversation.
Or do we want to have people ask questions? Or do we...
Let's see if you have anything else that you want to...
I'll just add on what you just said. I think from my time as a teacher, one of the most valuable lessons I had is sharing a bit about myself. The first day, the first week, as a teacher. What do I like? Giving all the kids like a glimpse into my personal life, just a little bit, right? Just letting them know what I like, and then it's a two-way street, and really you can get through to them once you know, hey, Susie loves Roblox, and then that's her thing. That gives me a powerful tool as a teacher to, number one, have a talking point, and I would always go out of my way too to do some research on those things, catch myself up on the latest, whatever it might be, anime thing that they liked, or things that I'm just totally unfamiliar with. But I think it's really important to go that extra mile as an educator. I think the kids can feel it, and I think it's a two-way street, very reciprocal situation.
I would just say for the For educators who are going to have to continue with perhaps hybrid models, who maybe can't make a full transition to remote-based learning, you know, try to get engaged with your facilities team. Get engaged with your administrative leadership folks when they're talking about doing renovations and those kinds of projects. The most successful projects that I've been part of are the ones where the faculty and I are working together and we're letting the intended function or the desired function of the program guide the design, and we're not trying to just say, well, we saw these pretty pictures in a magazine, so we want to do that here. Maybe that doesn't work here. Maybe we don't have the square footage or the infrastructure, this, that, or the other thing. But if you can be articulate insofar as what your needs are to serve the students, that can guide the design process on the facility side to make sure that A, you're going to get what you need to benefit your students, and B, I know what I'm going to be getting as a finished project from the facility side, so I can make sure that I'm able to maintain it properly for your benefit and the benefit of the students moving forward.
I'm really loving and hating to close this off. We didn't have enough room for question and answering, but the question that was brought out in the audience was just perfect. I just want to close with some of the pros and the cons that have been brought up is, you know, inability to focus on the screen. Some of our students get challenged by that. Technology issues. Have you been in some Zoom bombing sessions? I have. Also isolation, right? The probability of our young people that are struggling with mental health are being isolated because of social media and et cetera, and managing screen time. So I think we have a lot to learn. We got a lot to grow, and I think I would love to exchange with you and say, yeah, we should take ownership of where our education is going, and not leave it to our feds, to politicians. But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you to our panel speakers.
Thank you.